Maybe if I could open just by asking the panel, what do we mean maybe by energy efficiency in order to just set the ground level for the audience?
Energy efficiency, the way that FMM views it, is to put in the least amount of energy, the primary energy to get the maximum amount of work, right? In this particular field, people will be, that tends to go to energy efficiency, you see. But this has been talked about, energy efficiency has been talked about from time immemorial. The times when I was in TMB, we have been talking about energy efficiency more as a PR exercise, you see. So energy efficiency, when the power is cheap, people tend not to go for energy efficiency. That is the way that my starting point.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Let me just take you through a little bit of the industry history maybe. Traditionally, when you talk about efficiency, it's normally referred to the way that you convert from a raw form of energy, for example, coal or oil, to something of a different form which you want to use. Then electricity becomes in context of today's session. However, I think over the years, we're talking about a different dimension of energy efficiency now. It is how do you do it economically? So imagine now, if you talk about energy efficiency, you're really looking to two basic principles of efficiency. One is the technical efficiency, and now more current and significant is the economic efficiency of how do you run the business, how do you bring one unit of energy to the consumer. So in this respect, that I think we have to embrace whatever has been developed, whatever has been made available in the marketplace, the technology, and something more important now, I think, is how do consumers adapt to this new concept of efficiency? I think we are a bit lagging behind, if I can be very open and candid about this. Malaysia is not so at the forefront as to embracing this subject of efficiency. We talk of efficiency quite a lot. We talk, for example, I remember this famous cartoon by Lat to say, you need 5 men to change one street bulb along the streets. Now, a lot of people say that that's not efficient at all. But is that efficiency? Is that the only way that you want to look at efficiency? So this is in context of what we like to discuss today, and I'll leave it to the moderator and to the panel to move on.
As a manufacturer, we can talk about technical efficiency, but there's another part of it, the financial efficiency, how much money I can get out from certain kind of operations, you see. So we have to balance the two. Sometimes for the manufacturers, I will sacrifice the energy and the technical efficiency at the expense of to get a better financial efficiency.
Thanks, Doctor, for speaking on my behalf in that sense. I'll be interpreting energy efficiency from an original equipment manufacturer. So we look at energy efficiency across the board on how we can ensure our customer and our customer would ensure the best energy that be translated into a dollar savings and whatnot. So we're looking at from the point of generation. So looking at the power plant, that's where we work with utilities and to ensure the technology of the gas turbine, steam turbine is the highest efficient possible. And then it goes to transmission and distribution, the technology that could be applied in place. You've heard about smart grid. And how can we ensure a more stable grid to ensure energy security in the long run? And the most important thing now, I think, is the role of technology company in helping out at the other end of distribution of energy, which is the consumer end. What can we, consumer, do more efficiently to ensure the energy efficiency?
Thank you. Okay, with that, I think that we would all agree that over time, as Malaysia has become more industrialized and become a higher income than in the past, of course, our energy demands have grown in tandem. And yet, I think if we all read the blogs and so on, there's a sense that maybe our energy policies actually encourage waste. We are not as efficient as we could be. And I'd like to ask the panel how they feel about that. Maybe starting with Dr. Philip.
Yeah, if you look back, you see, you said that our energy is very cheap. You have to look back in the history. If you look at the history of the gas, for example, originally gas was supposed to be a pass-through, all right? Actually, way back before 1995, There was supposed to be a pass of CPI minus N plus Y. I remember what CPI. And it was actually implemented. And the reference price of gas then was $6.40. All right? And the pass-through mechanism for the actual cost of fuel was implemented for about 3 quarters. At the time, gas dropped below $6.40. And everybody get a negative reduction in tariff. Everybody was happy. Then when the gas goes above 640, that is where the consumer get hurt after that, the financial crisis, 97 financial crisis came into play. And as a result of which, the government, in order to help the industry, government makes gas price to fix at 640. And that has gone on until 2009 when the government decided to remove the subsidy gradually. And the industries now is waiting to see the direction that the government is going in how are they going to remove the energy efficiency and how the industry can get prepared for that eventuality.
Okay, I'll latch on to that one actually. It's quite true. You have to understand what's happened to the country over the last maybe one generation, 20, 25, 30 years ago. I think maybe some of you are a bit too young for this, except for my friend Lal Chan, who remember that oil at one time was about 2 ringgit a gallon. A gallon was 4.5 liters or so. That's 2 ringgit per 4.5 liters. Today is 2 ringgit for 1 liter. Now this is what Philip is saying, that it is the price of commodity. How much do we pay for that? And then the government looks at, how do I maximize the benefit of this commodity for the overall development of the economy, the national economy, right? There were priorities set to say, I have to attract FDIs, foreign direct investment. I have to move on into rural electrification. I have to move on to some extent of industrialization, some agro-based industries. I have to build infrastructure, etc. So the government's portfolio must include all these elements of development. And power happens to be one of the things that might drive the economy. Fortunately or unfortunately, energy, raw form, like say oil, was being procured at the level of about 50 ringgit, I think, at that time. At one time, it was so cheap that one of the power plants in the TNB or LLN fleet was buying oil 50 ringgit per ton, right? Now, I think the conversion is about 6 barrels or so per ton. So imagine that is the price of oil. So it's about 8 ringgit per barrel, which translates to about $3 per barrel. In 2008, the oil price in the world market struck at $148 per barrel. Imagine in a span of about 30, 40 years, oil price moved from being $3 a barrel to $148 a barrel. Fortunately, today it has come down to a more reasonable level at $100 a barrel, say, or slightly lower. What I'm trying to say is that these are the economics of overall economic growth. You can have a commodity to fuel your industrial growth. You want to have socio-economic activities in the country. You want to promote industrialization, etc. Now, I think when Philip said about the gas price becoming was explored and exploited to give you a cheap source of energy, originally it was envisaged that this will have to link to some kind of index, for example, the CPI. That was very useful at that point because the government in the early 80s wanted to promote the huge chapter in industrialization of the country's growth. That came into being. It was just fortunate, we were very blessed the fact that we found oil off the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, brought it onshore, piped it across, and used that to power up the national growth. Now, these are all history. It has finite reserves. It was very, very cheap, in fact, to drill oil and explore and exploit. The government used the word exploit because this was the engine of growth for the industry. As we went along over the last 25 years, the volume that you can get from the ground starts depleting. You cannot run away from this. This is a physical phenomena. This is natural reserves that you have. All those cheap wells were starting to gradually trend downwards in terms of throughput volume. Now, what do we have? We have a crunch situation when the gas is somehow insufficient to power up the whole country's expectation in terms of generation capacity and energy requirements. Then you have a situation to handle. What do you do next? Hence, the government thought of what alternative fuels can we think about. Okay, there was a little bit of hydro coming from our hills and Cameron Highlands and Pergao and Terengganu, etc. But that was not sufficient to power up the whole national growth. The option then became necessary that we took up coal as an input to the fuel system. Now, coal has to be procured at international market prices because we don't have that kind of reserves or mineable or economically mineable reserves in country as far as coal is concerned. Except, you might argue, for some relatively small fields of low-grade young coal in Sumatra. That was also experimented, but not doing very well in terms of generation mix and transportability. So you have all these equations come into play now, and that's why I think we'll have to think of how best that we can optimize or maximize the efficiency of the raw fuel that we have into something which is more usable in the form of electricity or something that can be used straight away for heating or whatever application. It is very critical now. How do we translate from a raw form to a usable form in the most economic manner and utilize most efficiently?
The point that I want to make is about the coal-fired power stations that Dr. Razak is talking about. Something that I could not quite understand is this. Now, we heard about tenders being floated out for building old coal-fired plant. That is fine. But the thing, if you look at the thing carefully, all right, power plants are designed for something like 37 types of coal. Imagine if you are in the power business, to design a boiler for 37 types of coal and to get the best efficiency, I think it is not there. You need to optimize the kind of coal that you want to buy. Right? The way that I see it, right? If you are going to actually get to tender out the new power station, why don't you allow the sponsor to source their own coal, to design their coal to the coal best suited for the boilers, but the price should not be higher than the reference coal that TMA is buying. That way, you can actually improve upon the efficiency of the coal-fired stations today. That is why to say that even though the government is doing something in terms of making the industry more efficient, there more can be done.
Okay, I think that's great. Maybe if I could, first of all, thank Dato Razak and Engineer Philip for their deep insights into the industry. But let me take up a little bit more macro first, and then we will go down deeper later. Maybe let me ask Azli, what you think of energy efficiency policy in Malaysia and the energy efficiency level in Malaysia relative to benchmark countries?
I mean, let me take a step back first, because I was ready to jump to Dato's comment earlier, because he was alluding to one thing but not mentioning the term which I would like to mention here, subsidy. So I think we try it's a curse and it's a blessing at the same time, and how we treat subsidy when it comes to try to balance our energy mix. And you can't run away. I mean, the whole notion of subsidy is trying to bring down the cost to end user like us. We want to pay cheap petrol at the end. We want to pay a lesser electricity bill. And how are we being perceived in other markets? Let's take a look in ASEAN and look at we are the highest in terms of subsidy per GDP per capita in comparing to other countries coming next after.
The highest per GDP relative per capita. Wow, the highest relative to GDP per capita.
Not the absolute amount. Okay. Talking about the per capita. But if you look back,
I did not know that.
And I was in the Middle East for 6 years, and you look back at how the percentage of this energy subsidy across all the GDP is floating around 10%-ish, and you look at Malaysia, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it's around 2%-ish. That's around the range. And what actually is the best mechanism here? I mean, you look at the things happening in the States, where they're pushing Obamacare and all the other incentives, the other I would say benefits to be balanced benefits from energy perspective and healthcare, but US actually is the highest contributor to energy subsidy, providing $500 billion every single year. So I think, how do we create the balance here? And then riding back to your question on the from regulatory standpoint, I think GE and other technological company here in Malaysia, I think we work closely with the government. We try to support very much in terms of the legislation and decree that helps energy efficiency. I won't talk about energy efficiency bill, that's Philip's forte there. But I think just out of discussion, just mentioning things that kind of contributing to energy efficiency, things like national green technology policy, feed-in tariffs is definitely a different story on its own. But I think we are heading there. We have regulation that has been carved towards addressing energy efficiency. But I think the question here is, which I think both of the gentlemen would agree, is that enough in terms of enforcement? What can we do more?
Can I just add on, I think, to your question, Kelvin, to be pertinent to the question, I would say that there has been studies as to the use of energy as a factor or as an element of total GDP. Malaysia doesn't fare well at all, okay? Because based on statistics compiled by these consultants, they looked at different countries and how these countries use 1 unit of energy to what level that you can produce X unit of GDP. We don't fare at all. I think we are falling behind. Even people like Thailand are better off than us. Of course, the developed countries, the US and so on, are way above. Our numbers are really at the lower end of developing countries. I think we have to do something quite drastic in a way that we use this energy, whether it's raw form or converted form, to generate the GDP that we expect. More so now, we're talking about the high-income economy, the GNI, etc. We are not prepared for this yet. I think there has to be something more drastic that the government can do in terms of intervention or promotion or otherwise, trying to bring this level up to such an extent that we will be able to compete. Otherwise, we will just be falling behind. Unfortunately now, okay, maybe I'll just stop there now because the subject of subsidy is too messy to handle.
Maybe if I could possibly.
Yeah, you see, Dato Razak was talking about more in terms of energy generations. But we'll look at even the cars. If you compare the number of cars that we have, against the population, I think ours are equivalent to those of US, among the top. But I'm very glad that the government is implementing a policy of the MRT, LRT. Those would actually improve the energy usage in terms of the transportation sector. And I hope this will go on not only around the Klang Valley, but more towards the other city as well. That, when I was energy planners way back in 20 years ago, one of the ways to improve on energy efficiency of the country is for mass transportation.
I think just a small point, Kevin, just to give you some perspective, out of the total energy demand for the country, Malaysia, irrespective of whether it's power or transport, about 50% is used by the transport sector. 50% of the total energy consumed by the country is used for transport sector, and maybe 45 or so by power sector and some domestic heating and cooking, etc. So you can imagine how much effort are we putting on to having a better number for energy efficiency in the transport sector. Power sector, we have done reasonably well, thanks to the help of the EPCs that we have now in the advancement in technologies. We have moved up in terms of our thermal efficiencies. But in transport sector, apart from the little bit of public transport systems that's emerging right now, I think we're well below.
But in terms of here, we are talking about, when you talk about GE having machines that have high efficiency, that is in terms of the OEM side. But a lot can be done, not only by the consumer, but the people, the players within the industry, the power generators. Are they actually making use of the efficient equipment in the way they can actually squeeze more out from it? The way I can see the industry is being played out now, at least those that I have observed, the rules of the game of the dispatching of it doesn't allow that. For just a case in point, that which I want to point out is this. the power generators get paid by their availability, all right? And if you take the power equipment out for maintenance or any schedule outage, you lose your availability. And if you lose the availability, you lose your payment, all right? But during the weekend, you don't require some of the gas-fired power plant. You let the power generators take it off for offline washing. If you do an offline washing, the efficiency improvement is great. You see, you are not going to use the power plant during public holidays, and a lot of the power plant are public holiday or weekends. The rules of the game must be such that you don't get you make it in a way that both can be a win-win situation and share the improvement and efficiency between the off-taker as well as the power generators. You can actually improve upon that.
Okay, so Dr. Philip, it sounds to me that, and also Dr. Razak, you have both stated basically that the rules of the game need to be tightened up in order to drive energy efficiency. Now, is the industry, and for that matter, consumers, are we also going to move towards energy efficiency if energy is priced as it is?
Yeah, even the consumer, FMM has been fighting this particular thing. Now, those who knows about the power generations, you see, industry that uses steam also requires power. So what we can do is actually using cogenerations. That means to say the industry generate their power on itself as well as generating steam. If you understand the thermodynamics of it, efficiency of that nature can drive up to more than 80% of the energy used. But the thing is this, the regulations is put in place then, way back in 1995, right? By TMB there, because there is no proper regulators there, right? Where the thing is, the TMB is in the market to make money. The more energy I sell, the less efficient you are, I sell more energy, and then before I make more profit. So, but TMB would not publicly say, I'm against energy efficiency. That's not bad PR. So what they do is put obstacle for you to become energy efficient. Put obstacle for you to go to cogeneration. So that's why cogeneration in the past has not taken off in a big way here because of the obstacles that is in place. So that's why I say is that the rules of the game must change if you want to go to be more energy efficient, not only between you and me in the house but in the way of electricity being generated. Imagine I'm saying about 80+% of energy efficiency, and if you have cogeneration, you at the inside. So you cut away the 12% transmission and distribution loss as well. See? So it actually improves very much in terms of energy efficiency usage. But I understand under the ETP, whatever the 11, cogenerations is one of the targets. You see? But you need a government agency to drive it in the correct direction. You don't leave it to the TMB to say, I welcome you. See? So that is that.
Okay, maybe to answer Kelvin's questions now, I'd just like to share with you two small stories. I had a chance to visit publication house some time ago, and they were doing special books. They were not just printing, off the mail and doing the production type books, but these are special books. And after the general tour and so on, we were brought to one special area, which was under kind of security. So we were brought in not knowing exactly what it was. Actually, they were printing a book with some kind of gold decoratives around in the book. Okay, for us, I say it's the Quran. You see, why I'm telling you this story is that there are a few workers who are skilled enough to handle this book, using the gold dust to sprinkle on some portions of the book cover or whatever to enhance the beauty of this publication. Each day when the worker comes, he is given X milligrams of gold dust. It's very fine gold dust, which is to be used to sprinkle on the lettering or the blocks that they have. At the end of the day, he has to weigh up what's the balance of gold dust quantity that he has after doing the work, and pass it back to the counter where they would be able to reconcile. And his SOP is that he has to use only X milligram for this, and he has been given a little bit of spare at the end of the day. Now, we saw him trying to clean up. I don't know, it was approaching lunch, or he had to clean up his workplace, and he was literally picking up every dust, every speck of the gold dust, all right? And then he has to pack it nicely and hand it over to the counter for reconciliation purpose. That's the story of gold. Why? Because it's so precious that every small speck or dust is valued accordingly. On the other hand, this other story is very much local and in the context of what we're talking about. I've heard some stories, this is true. This was told to us by some estate agents who would go around looking for potential houses for expats to stay on for a period of time. And he told us that the story is that this expat came in, saw the house and wanted to see how many aircons you have and what sort of garage, etc. and so on. And apparently, he would switch on the main supply and all the switches for the aircon and so on. It doesn't switch off. It runs until the end of his tenancy 3 years down the road. Then they'll just check out the bill. Imagine that this is two different stories, of the ends of the spectrum, if you like. Here is one commodity which is so priceless, every speck counts. Here is a commodity, a service, which was being rendered, and what value do we attach to that? Now, the amount of power and energy that you consume, even to power up your car, or your garage, your cigar dehumidifiers, your cats or your pets' houses, these are the things that go around into the consumption of electricity. Now, is it morally correct? Is it morally right? Then we ask ourselves, is the price of energy or the tariff correctly priced such that the consumers would behave in a manner that would be responsible enough as a citizen?
Okay,
If I may, thanks, Abdul. I think just riding on Dato's analogy, I think the whole concept here is what's the motivation behind it? You have to see how organizations or end users are motivated towards pushing the limit in terms of energy efficiency. So let me tell a story from GE's perspective. We run what we call Eco-Imagination Treasure Hunt, which is similar to what you used to know as energy audits. So it's a subset of energy audit, but it's something more. And it's also a model that has been done a lot in Middle East and Eastern Europe as well as in the States. So basically, you go into an operating building like this, the whole of Publica, you assess how is the whole entity running its electricity, everything from generation, transmission, and what are the equipments they've done in between. Are they utilizing the best way of using of energy, saving and whatnot? So GE or be it any entity here, they're also third party who run this purely as a business model. So let me take that example. I take away my GE hat. So a third party would come to you with a solution. So these are the A, B, C, D, and E that you can do. You can upgrade this equipment and whatnot. And you guarantee with certain amounts of saving, which translate to certain amount of dollar saving after a period of time. And certain companies do finance and pay for that capex, additional capex required for that X year amount of saving, because the greater amount of dollar recognition towards the end of the process. So it's this proven model that has been done in many parts of the world, and GE is helping a lot of our partners in that sense. And locally, there's a story where we work closely with Malaysia Airlines just before they're getting their approvals from to get into One World Alliance. So this is a real story. They've checked all the box in terms of the clearance into One World Alliance, but one of the final audit comes to energy audit of their multiple facilities over there, and that's where we come in and help GE with our partners as well. So you see the different kind of motivation here, and I think usually it's fueled by monetary and dollar related motivation.
Just a small comment, Kevin. I have a colleague. If he comes to the room now, today, he sees these lights being torched at us, he says, what a waste of energy this is. Is it really necessary to have this big I don't know, this is what, 500 watt lamps or something? How many? 4 of them flashing on to us, 4 of us. I don't know whether this
You
is
want to make sure we look good.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is the right way to sort of take a video clip of the proceedings, right? So maybe the LED can do just as well. Maybe there are some other solutions. This is a kind of energy audit that we ought to do actually, whether it is in our home, in our office, in anywhere in the shops like this. Really, we have to start on looking into this kind of innovations and technology that will assist us. Otherwise, we're just not conscious enough. What does it take to send 1 unit of energy down to that lamp there to power up 500 watts?
Now, the energy efficiency sometimes is in the environments that you're working in. You see, right? I used to run one of the IPPs about 5 years ago. Right? You must create the environments. You see, the original IPPs, most of you will agree, they are very, very profitable. All right? But to ask them to energy efficiency, right? You still can, without energy efficiency in terms of the operations, they still could make a heck of a lot of profit. But the thing is, if you create an environment for your staff to squeeze more and squeeze more out of it, sometimes it's professional satisfaction, right? Professional satisfaction in the way that, oh, I can actually do better, right? And they learn to it, you see. The CEO I was under with was actually in charge of paper, the power, and oil and gas. And every time they come to our power division, oh, they are squeezing water out of the stones. All right. So that and the staff are very motivated, and as a result of it, my staff got stolen. One went to went to Hong Kong to run a multinational corporation to do exactly the things that we have been doing there. Right?
And they get higher salaries.
Pardon?
And they get higher salaries.
They're going to offer 3-4 times the salary. I cannot afford it. You see?
Yeah.
All right. Another one that Azul got pinched by Singapore. See? But to me, that is not a loss. You see? That is our foreign exchange earning. You see?
As a shameless plug, we do have a human capital development NKEA as well. There you go. So he was supporting that already.
Yeah.
I just feel sort of itchy that I have to tell you this other story. We do a lot of engagements in the work that we do. We've talked to so many people, and I talked to FMM as well. Philip was not there on that day. But what we hear is that, unfortunately, they were quite very kind and to share this information. Because the tariff was set quite low and has not been revised significantly, most of the industries today would pick what is the minimum cost to invest to start up
Financial
a factory.
efficiency.
Right? Why do you want to buy a very expensive, efficient motor from developed countries? When you go to the shop, you see one which was made from one Asian country, which can do the job, and they don't care about the efficiency so much. In terms of relative efficiencies, I think one can be about 75%. This can be as high as 90%. But the cost of buying this machine, this motor against that motor, is so significant that as a new investor setting up a factory, I'll just pick on this one on the shelf, put it on. Well, I don't mind because the energy cost is so cheap. This is the type of consumption behavior that we have in our system today. I think this is linked to what is the price of tariff that has been delivered to the premise.
That is only one aspect of it, you see. If you are in the industries, you see, Dato Razak is talking about energy efficient motor, right? To get the energy import duties of the energy efficient motors, it takes the process you have to go to Maida, go to there, right? Now, if my motors breaks down in the factory, I want it to be replaced more or less immediately. Otherwise, I lost production. All right? And for me to get clearance for this energy efficiency motor, for me to import so that I can get the tax exemption or whatever it is no go. All right? It's no go. So if you want to have energy efficient, let it be able to be purchased quite easily. All right? Not having to have import duties, exemption, things like that.
Do you have, Azli, do you have any comments about, importation of equipment and so on and so forth?
Not so much of importation. I think I want to bring discussion more towards innovation being
Okay.
being an enabler within the energy efficiency. I think I speak on behalf of my other colleagues, Rosman and Sajid here. I think OEMs and the competition has made us better in terms of trying to build better technology for utilities, for example. And now we're talking about gas turbine in the north of 60% efficiency. And I think this is what OEMs and technological companies trying to do for our customer and pass on to the other side of the business. I think we look at the whole spectrum, and I like to see it from the energy efficiency from both supply and demand, and how OEMs, technology companies, trying to do as much as possible from technology adaptation that would push energy efficiency to the max. So I mentioned about generation when it comes to gas turbine or steam turbine and whatnot. And then it goes to transmission and distribution. We have smart grid technology. I mean, most of the OEMs now has been working closely with utilities. I mean, I just want to dwell a bit on smart grid. I think it's a well-known fact that it is a control mechanism where you can have a more effective and better grid control. I think the stumbling block here is the capex related to it. I think Rosman and myself has been a number of discussion with TNB in trying to promote technologies that we can ensure this amount of saving towards the end. And the control goes all the way beyond the utility itself. It goes in terms of controlling at the user's end as well, having smart meters, for example, at your end. There are pilots going on as we speak, but I think the question here, how far can we go from now? And there is a stumbling block here. Coming back to financial efficiency, where do we kind of draw the limit between capex being a stumbling block, being a burden, versus the end benefit that we're looking at?
Well, let me...
On that particular subject of smart grid, if you want a smart grid and let the user to control whatever his usage, you must have a time of day tariff. You see that each hour, whether what is the kind of pricing equation. If you have that, I can control my house usage. You see, I can actually control my washing machine during very cheap time. But you don't have. You don't have that for even the peak and off peak is only for the industry. You don't have it for the domestic. You see, so I just switch on when my washing machine. When I require it. But if you are talking about smart grid, having smart meters, actually I can control my operations in the house. When the price of electricity is very expensive, I can actually switch off. Half an hour switching off your refrigerator is quite easy. Right? It's quite effective in order to reduce your bill. See? That is for financial efficiency. But in that way, you also the utility also benefit for shifting your load during the peak time to the off-peak time, which indirectly improve the efficiency of the generation as a whole.
Yeah, so, gentlemen, I get the sense that, of course, naturally, all private sector companies, frankly, have a fiduciary duty to maximize profit for their shareholders. That's a fact, right? Now, from the government or the society side, the goal, I guess, should be to set up systems which encourage companies to be efficient in pursuit of maximizing profit, right? Maybe let me switch the discussion over to consumers a little bit. Do you think that for the average consumer, the incentive structure is there to be energy efficient? I confess, when I go to the shop and buy, let's say, a refrigerator, I hardly know whether or not the fridge I'm buying is energy efficient. I am not sure if anybody here does. If anybody here even knows what the energy efficient refrigerator or aircon versus a non-efficient one is, maybe put up hands. Anybody knows? So 2 people have put up their hands. They actually know. 3. Rosman doesn't count because he obviously knows. So the audience, it seems, does not in general know. Maybe I ask the panel who are specialists.
Let me put it along the line that you're talking about. I say, those incentives that the government is giving, right? I'm talking between you and me, all right? The incentive are more targeted to the industries. What have you got in terms of encouraging you to energy besides your fridge, you see? Now, if you want to put in FIT to use solar photovoltaic, all right? If I'm an industry, if I got a company, I get ITA, I got what is that, the pioneer status and all that. But if you are an individual owner, all right, if you put your photovoltaic on top of your house, well, there's argument to say photovoltaic is not efficient, but you must understand, even though it's not efficient, it is not using any of the thermal energy. To me, it's not, otherwise you don't use it, you waste it. But leave that aside. What incentive have I? What incentive have I to use photovoltaic in this particular case? If I buy a computer, I think I can get some tax benefit in terms of $3,000 of deduction. If you do feeding this photovoltaic on top of your roof, you see, it doesn't give you. The only thing is your own personal satisfaction that actually I'm reducing the carbon footprint, you see. So if you, before the FIT comes into play, I had mine before the FIT comes into play, 2007. My wife asked me how much it cost. Then it was 120,000 for 4.2 kilowatt peak. I said, what's your return? I said, hardly any return lah. I say, but when I buy you a diamond ring, I didn't ask for return. You people have to have a different concept in terms of energy efficiency. You are actually, if you are do energy efficiency, you are saving some of our energy resources more to our children and grandchildren. Right? That is one way for you to look at energy efficiency as well, not just financial efficiency. I remember at the time when gas was in Sarawak for $1 per million BTU. They don't want to use combined cycle, even though combined cycle can go 50%. They say, financially, it's better for me to be open cycle. Is that efficiency, energy efficiency? Is that responsible or not? You are better judge of it, you see.
Maybe let me switch over to Dr. Razak and Azli first, and then after that, I think we can open to the floor for questions already.
Okay. Yeah? I'm sorry, I have to take you to half a minute of terminology first. Originally, when you were in school, when you were a small boy, when you started learning physics, how do you bring supply to your light bulb? You just put the battery there, you string a wire, then you have a light bulb. Okay, that may be okay for a while, but then you think of what happens if there is something wrong with that first wire. Then you add in the second wire as a parallel connection. Is that good enough? Maybe your kid brother will go and chop it off or pull the string up, so you have a third wire. And likewise, in the supply system, it's nice to say that, yes, you can have one source generator here, one light source, you can bring in one wire. Now, what if there is a lightning strike on that line? Now, what if that particular line has to be taken out for maintenance? So hence, I'm trying to lead to the point that there is this infrastructure. And you, as customers, me included, we are demanding more and more of a better quality of service without any interruption. Hence, I would say this is to help us all understand that this is a growing system, there's growing level of expectation of the quality of service. Hence, this will have to be provided. Unfortunately, it costs money. There's iron, there's steel, there's copper, there's a lot of things that will have to go ahead to deliver this point. Now, I want to introduce the phenomena or the topic called customer empowerment. What Philip was alluding to just now is what I thought the general term is customer empowerment. The empowerment means that you take charge of how you consume electricity, how you control the bill at the end of the day. Very much so like the cars of today, you have the econometer which will swing as you press the pedal hard, the meter will swing up, then you know that you're consuming so many liters per kilometer. Then, the same thing, one day perhaps, let's all have a dream. My dream is that each consumer will be empowered such that you know exactly how much are you consuming. At that rate, how much will your end demand bill be to pay the TMB or whoever is providing the service. Now, I think only then that you will realize, I have a list here, 2 minutes. Simply switching off the lights in the rooms and not in use. Setting the aircon thermostats at higher temperature. Changing fluorescent tubes or lights to LED ones. Switching electrical appliances off the mains, not leaving that small, tiny pilot light glowing through the night, and that's consuming power, mind you, it's not for free. Each small LED red or green light that is sort of twinkling at night is about half a watt to 1 watt of supply. You multiply by your appliances, your computer, your Astro, etc. You total up, you can save quite a bit of money. Somebody has said that he has already saved 20 or 30 ringgit on a monthly bill after that we had the discussion in the office. And then there's things like there are some energy guzzlers in the system. You have a fridge, you have a freezer, you have air, the tumbler, the dryer. All these are big consumers of electricity. Are we conscious enough when we choose this particular appliance? Are we going for the star rating? Is a 5-star or 4-star or 3-star? And all this would add up to how much you consume at the end of the month.
My comment on this is this: you are preaching to the adults here. See, I think a more effective way, the way I find it, see, if actually you should educate those in the schools, you see. And if you educate those in the schools, when the children come back and tells you, hey, why are you doing this? Why are you doing? I think that is more effective. I find this in terms of recycling in Taiwan. It is taught in the school. So when the children come back to the school, you tell the parent, you should not do this, you should not do that. And if the children tells you that, to me, that is more effective than for Dato Razak to tell you don't switch it off.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maybe just a final statement from Azli, then we'll...
Just a quick comment. I had to go back to Philip's point on feed-in tariffs. I have a soft spot when it comes to feed-in tariffs, especially the fact that GE kind of helped in the formulation of feed-in tariffs in Malaysia. With humility, I slightly disagree to your comment. I know the feed-in tariffs in Malaysia is not perfect in that sense. And I've worked in the past where I've studied the mechanism of feed-in tariffs in Germany and Italy, for example, where people are mushrooming, fitting in various PV panels and selling back to the grid. Obviously, the environment is different. The sunlight is different when it comes to over there. The different panels that are being used over there can't be used over here. Having said that, I give kudos to Puan Badra and the team. I think we are off to a good start. Even in the region, we are fully aware that our feed-in tariffs is not as comprehensive as Thailand, for example. At least it's better than Indonesia. We are moving towards the right direction. The mix here is imbalanced now. There's a rush of going through solar PV and very lacking in terms of what's been taken up in biomass and biogas, for example. But I think at this point of time, as we speak, there's a revision going on, and we keep on improving and improving. I think that would be a contributing factor to energy efficiency as a whole.
So I want to thank everybody, particularly the panelists, Engineer Dr. Philip, Dr. Razak, Azli, for coming. I'd like to give them a round of applause.